What's going on, everybody? New time, same till Mets do us part, same lateness that we always do. We try to go at least 10 minutes late each and every single week when we go live here on Twitter and on YouTube. And of course, YouTube is the best way to interact with the show. John Sapanaro out in Los Angeles, California. Matt Ibby Ibanez solving all kinds of issues with Spectrum or Charter or whatever you have that gives you internet, but he is here. His phone is up. He's ready to rock. Ibby, I know this is a loaded question right now, but how you feeling?
I've been a lot better, John. The last 15 minutes of just running around trying to figure this out to make sure that we could still get a show in was a little bit hectic, but you do what you got to do. The phone's up. I got the charger ready in case once it dies. We're ready to go. We're getting this show in. I can't see any comments. I can't see anything other than what we have going on here, so you'll be relaying anything to me, because I'm basically working blind here, but we'll make it work. We always do. Let's have some fun.
Listen, it's a new time slot. I don't know how active the comments are going to be, but we did have a few jump off right at the beginning. So I just want to shout people out. We got Carlos Ramos saying Ibby's calling Spectrum as we speak. He also saying, notice how John talks about himself in the third person now, because I did throw you under the bus from our show account. I said, believe it or not, Hollywood John is ready, but Ibby's having some internet issues. So that is me.
It was me.
Just talking. But yeah, it's me talking in the third person. So it is what it is. And then Rael with the comment of the day so far. Good Lord, it's going to be opening day until he's ready. Absolutely.
I do what I can.
Look, we got to do what we got to do. Glad for the delay. I was able to take a quick shower. That is definitely TMI, but we appreciate it.
All right. Well, I'm glad.
For the first time since we've been doing live shows, we have a guest this week. I am super excited to bring this dude on because we have talked to him before. He's been on our show. We've been on his show. So without further ado, I'm going to bring him on. Ant Rivera from Subway to Shea. Ant, how you doing, man?
What's up, Ant?
Ibby, Johnny Hollywood, how sweet it is. Spring training's here, baby.
Let's do this.
Training is here. But before we talk about that, we have to talk about the other big news, which was, of course, Keith Hernandez. He's back. 3-year deal. Woo! Reportedly more than the $775,000 he made last season. He's going to call, 4 or 5 games a year probably for that dollar amount. And then, of course, like Ant mentioned, we have to start to look forward. He mentioned it last week. So, Ant, you're the special guest. Your thoughts on Keith re-signing, and then that little tidbit I threw in there in the end. Do you think this is the final contract of Keith Hernandez working in the Mets booth?
It depends on how many sighs we get per broadcast from him. I mean, he usually groans and moans for a little bit, so we'll see how this goes. I would assume that this possibly could be the last contract, because I think I read somewhere now that this broadcast team is now superseded the Lindsey Nelson, Bob Murphy, and Ralph Kiner trio, right? That this is the 18th season or something like that.
That's correct. They are actually the longest tenured booth in MLB history at this point.
Wow. Yeah, man. So it's great to see Keith back. There was no way I feel like they were going to find someone that quick right into spring training. He was going to come back. Obviously, he was going to push it and fudge it because he lives in Florida, and now he could just hop on his car, head to Port St. Lucie, and get ready for a spring training broadcast if he wants to.
And, Ibby, that's something that you said. You were like, I think we're going to get a resolution to this right before spring training starts, because Keith is holding out. He doesn't want to work spring training games, or he only wants to work, 4 spring training games or whatever it is. So I don't think you're shocked, but how are you feeling about Keith being back? And then, what are your thoughts on this possibly? I don't want to bring up the negative, but you have to. Keith's getting older. He's been in baseball for 50 years. He's been sighing like crazy. So,
Obviously, I'm pumped up that he's back, a 3-year deal. I do believe that this is probably his last go-around in terms of a contract. We talked about it last week. Hopefully, we don't have to, I don't want to look too far ahead and think of, the words that they've put out there in the open of them saying that, they're all going to go out together. So I'm hoping that, we're not on the final 3-year run of this booth. But as for Keith, I do think that this is probably going to be his last go-around, but I am excited that he is back. I love what he brings to the booth. I love the humor. It's always needed, even though he feels as though baseball is probably this style of baseball is passing him by. He doesn't understand it. He still brings so much to the booth. So, yes, I'm very pumped up that Keith is back. 3 years, like you said, he'll probably work 4 games a year. And, as long as we get those good fundies and we get those Keithisms in the booth, I am always happy about that. Shout out to Athlete Logos for that awesome design.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm so happy that Keith is back. I've got the framed autographed Keith Hernandez jersey behind me right there. You can't see that it's Keith, but I promise it is. I love Keith. I didn't really watch him as a player. It was much, 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 much later in his tenure, and I was very, 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 very young when that happened. But I did have the experience of, getting to love Keith and go back. Like so many of us, I love Keith from Seinfeld. I love Keith from being in the booth. And then it's like, oh yeah, you go back and you celebrate this guy's career. So, look, I'm absolutely thrilled he's here, but it is the elephant in the room, guys. I mean, he is getting older. These guys are all getting older. So I do think inevitably this might be the final go around for Keith. I think Ronnie's still got a lot in him. I think, Gary's one of those people you're going to have to pry the job out of his cold, dead hand. So, and rightfully so. There's only 30 of these jobs, man. And, you don't want to give it up, especially when you're a guy like Howie or you're a guy like Gary, where you grew up rooting for these teams. So, it's something that it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful to have these jobs. So I'm happy. I'm happy that he's back. I'm happy that everybody's there. The sentiment here in the comments has all been the same. Chris saying 775K. Damn, I should have been a broadcaster. Yeah, probably. Probably we all should have. Rael saying Keith's keeping that seat warm for Hollywood. Maybe, probably not. I don't have the credentials to do it. Then we've got some people, jumping in with you. And Chris saying, yes, 18 years is how long they've been together. This has come up a couple times, and we're going to get into it in a little while. Carlos Ramos saying, I need to have a convo with you about the Ghost Runner. And I know that is going to be a thing. Rael saying, if Keith wasn't cranky, he wouldn't be Keith. Absolutely
Very
fair.
true.
Following it up by saying what I just said, Gary's never leaving that booth. He will be buried there. Yeah, he absolutely will. James Dowling joining the conversation. Howdy, everybody. And Stevie Mac.
What's up, JD?
Doing what we do better than we do it. Hit the like button. Thank you.
Hit the like.
Especially because we're going at a new time, and this is probably going to be our new time moving forward. We want to make sure we maximize people being able to interact with the show the way that the way that you guys have come to know and love it. So we appreciate that. We want to make sure all that stuff is rolling. So, and look, I'm going to, you know what? I wasn't going to go here next, but I'm just going to do it. Ghost Runner is officially official. It's going to happen in perpetuity. I know there are other rule changes that are taking place this year. We can talk about those when we get a little closer to the season. I think once we see them in action. But for you, what's the Ghost Runner beef? What's the?
I don't hate it. I mean,
I knew you were going to say
my attention span for baseball, honestly, nowadays is the 9 innings. You go past, 12, 13, 14, the 18 inning games, I don't want to see. I don't even like, double headers going into extra innings. I mean, I don't mind it. If they didn't have it, I'd be okay. I can deal with it, but I really don't mind it. Maybe if they pushed it back to, like someone said, push it back to the 11th or 12th inning, I'm okay with that too, as long as it's not in the postseason. Don't put it in the postseason, please. That's all.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you, honestly. Okay, so I hate the rule in thought. In spirit, I don't think it's real baseball, and it drives me absolutely insane.
Right.
But in practice, I don't hate it. I think it leads to exciting baseball. To me, I feel similarly, Ibby, and I'll let you chime in on this in a minute. I feel similarly about it that I do about the DH. Like, in the purest form, if everybody's going to go up there and try to be DeGrom and actually hit as a pitcher, if they're going to be Madison Bumgarner, hell, if they're even going to be Syndergaard who can run into one every once in a while but isn't actually a great hitter, then fine. But if I have to watch guys who are healthy enough to pitch but not healthy enough to swing the bat, go up there with 2 runners on and 2 outs and just take 3 strikes down the middle and then walk back to the dugout, that's not exciting. And so, you usually get these long games games that go 16, 17, 18 innings isn't a result of a back and forth. Oh, they scored and then they scored 2 runs and then they scored 2 runs. It's usually teams that don't get any hits for 8 innings. It's brutal. So you know what? Put the guy on second base and then action ensues. I think baseball's got an action problem. They've got a 3 true outcomes problem. Put a guy on second base. I don't hate it as much as I thought I would. Honestly, Ibby, I don't.
Man, the Mets are 10-2 last year in extra innings.
Yeah, it's
you got
hard
a guy like Buck. It helps too. The strategy.
Yep, it's very strategic.
Yeah, the 10-2 aspect. Obviously, it's hard as a Met fan to complain about it. My biggest problem with it was, and again, as long as it's something that's not going to be implemented in the playoffs, which is what that was said, it's just for the regular season, not the playoffs. Like, I guess the only thing that bothers me, even though our team did go 10-2 in those spots, it's just like when I see a runner on second and a guy just gets a base knock and then they score that run. To me, like you have, I guess this is just like the baseball player in me. It's like you have to like really earn that opportunity to get that player in scoring position to try and win a game. It's like almost as if it's like you're gifting something to someone. That's always been like my one issue with it. But to Ant's point before, I don't have a problem in terms of like beyond the 9, especially now as as you get a little bit older. I got kids, I get tired. Like I'm watching these games, and God forbid I'm watching a West Coast game. Forget about it. I'm done for. I can't do it. Just making sure. I will hit on the West Coast because I dread every single time that there's a 10-game swing out there, and I realize that for the next week and a half, I'm not going to be sleeping at all. So, but other than that, I don't mind it like I did at the initial jump when it was first put out there. Like when it first happened, I was like, this is so freaking stupid. I hate it. The point that I just made before about it, gifting, that's always going to be in the back of my head. But as long as it's not in playoff baseball, I'm okay. Like I'll get by. I'll adapt. Like you bring in these new things, I'll adapt to it. It's not that big of a deal. But I understand. Once again, we deal with the purists, the people who really respect the game for what it has, born from. You're always going to fight those people on a multitude of issues in the game of baseball. But for me, purist to an extent, I don't mind it as much. Just keep it out of the playoffs and we're okay.
Yeah, and I'm going to bounce it back to you here in a second. I'll give you the final thought on it since you're pretty much the inspiration of why this topic came up today. But I do want to jump into the comments and give people the opportunity to chime in. And we are in the minority. Everybody seems to disagree with us. Chris saying, awful. The Ghost Runner pisses me off so much.
I get it.
Saying, the joy of baseball is that there's no clock. It's the only clock without a sport. Tradition matters. Then follows it up by saying, watch the Ken Burns doc. I will not. He has the worst haircut I've ever seen, and I will not watch any Ken Burns documentaries until this dude shaves his head. Chill with the Pete Rose haircut. He looked terrible. No, Ken Burns, listen, I can't. I went to film school. If I have to hear one more thing about the Ken Burns effect on editing, everybody who does their first film school thing has a Ken Burns effect. It's terrible. I know he's a student of history, but he just annoys me, so I can't watch it. I just can't. Carlos Ortiz saying, I hate the rule. Carlos Ramos saying, is there a comments box to drop my complaints about the Ghost Runner? I think you're doing it right now. I think this is the comments box. If you want, I can screenshot it and send it to you in an email so that you can have it. I don't know. James Dowling saying, one time through the lineup, then add it would be okay. That kind of goes along with what you were saying, Ant, about, start it in the 10th or the 11th, or start it in the 11th or the 12th. Okay, something like that. I just think a lot of people, Chris, if there's a comments box, let me know. I want to fill it. Like, Ghost Runner goes against the history of the sport and what makes the sport unique. It's so much. And then there's a few. Carlos saying, I love the drama it builds. Okay. Chris saying the DH annoyed me a lot less than I thought it would. And Stevie Mack saying the Ghost Runner being placed at first could have been interesting because it brings the possibility of having a double play right off the bat. That's something they never even entertained. I think that is less strategic. So, look, there's a lot of things coming in. Most people disagree with us. And that's fair. But Ant, I know, listen, take it out. Take us home on this one.
Yeah, I didn't even think about what if they placed the runner at first base instead of second. I don't know what was the thought process of putting him at second, but I will say this. I think since it was incepted that we had this rule, what was it, 2020 that they started it?
Yeah.
I think teams have been able to adapt a whole lot better to it, as we're seeing, like, Edwin Diaz would be able to get through an inning without giving up a run, or like it's been happening where they haven't been giving up runs and we're still going into 12, 13 innings. So, I mean, the teams have been able to adapt. Besides that, the only other thing that also didn't really bother me was the double headers being 7 innings. I actually enjoyed that because, again, sitting there for 18 innings drove me nuts. So
Carlos Ramos saying, Anthony, I want to speak to your manager. That's absolutely fantastic. No, I actually had more of a beef with the 7-inning games than I did with the Ghost Runner. And here's the thing. There was a stat, and I wish I had the exact numbers in front of me because people are going to call shenanigans on this whole comment I'm about to make, but it's fair. The Ghost Runner, most games now end statistically in the 10th or 11th inning. Guess what? Before the Ghost Runner, most games ended in the 10th or the 11th inning if they went to extra innings. So it doesn't actually really change anything. It doesn't. It gives you a little bit, statistically, it's higher that you won't get into the 16, 17, 18, 19 inning games, but it is also still possible, guys. That's the other thing. It's not like they're letting games end in a tie. It's not like they're letting games, end where, okay, now it's a home run derby to decide who wins. Like, I just think it's kind of the same, and it annoys me less than I thought it would. Ibby, I don't know. I don't hate it that much. I don't.
Yeah, like I said, like as you become more accustomed to things, your hatred kind of wanes a little bit. But like I said in my piece before, I understand why a majority of the chat and people that are with us here are angry about it, because you love the game of baseball and for what it is. And when you take away from it and you take away from that tradition, like Rael was bringing up, a lot of get off my lawn, guys. And I understand why you're upset. I get it. But to your point before, John, like I had a much bigger issue with the 7-inning games as opposed to this rule. But to Ant's point as well, like as I was watching, I was like, wow, I just killed 2 games and they went by pretty quick. I still got my night ahead of me or whatever it was. Like you go through it and you're like, oh man, I was so angry, and all of a sudden you're like, well, that really wasn't that bad. Like the hemming and hawing that some of the comments were just doing before as well. But look, it is what it is. It's here. There's nothing we can do about it. We're always going to have something to complain about when it comes to Rob Manfred's MLB. It's just what it is, and we have to work our way through it. And hopefully the Mets again can go 10-2 in those spots this year.
Yeah, and look, I'm not going to apologize for Rob Manfred. I don't like Rob Manfred at all. I think he's bad for the game ultimately, but I also think that, and some of this stuff, and people have asked about other things, and I don't want to get too in the weeds on the new rules. The position players can only pitch in the 9th inning, and some of the other stuff we've already talked about. We can talk about that later on in another episode, but I think some of this stuff was going to happen no matter who the commissioner was. They did it because they wanted the games to be quicker. They did it because of the COVID season. A lot of this stuff just kind of happened, and I don't think it was going to matter if you were the commissioner. I think this stuff was going to happen regardless.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, they've been trying to make the game faster. We've got a pitch clock now. They're stopping shifting. I don't know how much that adds to any of that. Well, what else? They just made the bases bigger. He's
pizza boxes.
Yeah, he's trying new things. I don't know who it was. I think it was Metzmer. I posted this tweet today. I retweeted it. It was both bags. The smaller bag was the wallet of the Wilpons, and the other bag was the wallet of Steve Cohen.
I did see that one. I saw that one.
I did not see that. I was running around today, and that is golden.
It's
oh my
good.
God.
That is good.
And then I think even is it Mark Gooden? The parody account, or I don't know who it is.
Yeah.
The Federalist.
The head writer of the Federalist. Get it right.
Yeah.
He has the bags being at least like 10 times bigger than what they were shown there.
Yeah.
So,
That was great. I saw that one where he photoshopped the side by side, but he just made a bigger bag, and it was like, this is the new bag, and it looked enormous. That was absolutely fantastic.
I'll never support. I'll never be in favor of what of Rob Manfred, but at least he's trying things. I don't think what was it, Bud Selig before him? I don't think he tried much stuff to change baseball.
No, no.
Outside the steroids.
All Bud Selig did was turn a blind eye to steroids, wind up in the Hall of Fame about it, and keep everybody who did the steroids out of the Hall of Fame. That's exactly what Bud Selig did. So, I mean, look, it's to me, it's these rules are what they are. I think the pure. I understand baseball's been around a really long time. It's been around longer than any of us. It's been around longer than anybody in the comments, regardless of their age. It's it's a 100-year sport, but just because maybe something is that's the way we've always done it, I don't think that that's enough of a reason to continue to do something. I know this is a huge jump, but African American people weren't allowed to play baseball, so that's just because we always did it that way. So I just think every once in a while you have to open your mind up and say, hey, you know what? Let's try this thing. Maybe this thing is going to be better. And because these rules become permanent, I don't think that means that they're here forever. I just think they're a permanent rule change, and maybe it can happen. it might get undone or it might get tweaked. Who knows? In a couple of years, they might push it back to the 11th inning or the 12th. So, I think with a lot of this stuff, like Ant said, sometimes you got to try things and, you got to modernize. Baseball's a beautiful game, but it doesn't mean that it's a perfect game. I'm sorry.
Right. No, yeah, absolutely. And I just think that if there's one thing that I don't like about the changes is that I don't feel that when they do these changes, these wholesale changes or these minor tweaks that they want to try and build off of, and maybe they further tweak them down the road, I never feel as though they're coming, because this is the way baseball comes off. I never feel as though they're coming from a place of caring. I don't think it's so much so about caring about the game of baseball. I think it's more so about, we're, our fans or, the growth of the game, and we want to build more. So we're going to try to make things faster because people complain about this. So we're going to change this. And I was like, I feel like the game of baseball is always catering to the person that's never going to watch baseball, but they're constantly trying to reach that person. Whereas I'm not saying just, stay with your core group of purists, and then once they die off, then you have no one. I'm not saying that, but at the same time, if you're going to make changes to the point where you're saying that you love this game and you want to grow and you think that this is going to help. Don't do it just because you think it's going to, we shaved off 25 minutes of a baseball game. It's like, there's no difference between 3 hours and 2 hours and 45 minutes. There's no difference. It's the same. It's a long game. If you're going to watch baseball, you're going to watch baseball. It's as simple as that.
I do agree with you there. Rael saying, no, it's about viewership and ad dollars, which is just furthering your point. Absolutely right. I agree with you there. And I've always said baseball looks for love in the wrong places. Baseball's trying to change something they don't necessarily need to change. They just need to do a better job at growing what they already have. And again, I didn't love the rule when it was incepted. I don't hate the rule now in practice. It just is what it is. One of the rules, Ant, that I do absolutely hate is the fact that you can't throw over more than twice in an at-bat. Otherwise, it's a balk. Yeah. I think that one changes the fabric of baseball fundamentally. I also think the 3-batter minimum for relief pitchers changes the fabric of baseball completely. I think those are two very egregious things, way more than anything we've talked about so far. To me, those are the worst ones.
Yeah, I think they're really trying to take away from the pitchers, and by not allowing them to throw over so many times. And then you got, the pitch clock as well, which is probably not going to help a guy like Adam Ottavino. Hopefully he's able to, transition and overcome that. I think even today, during his press conference, Max Scherzer, actually, he likes the pitch clock, and he likes there only being one timeout for the batter, which we saw in the playoffs drove the Mets nuts because San Diego was constantly calling timeouts. So to have only, one timeout and allowing the pitcher, like Scherzer said, to control the situation and to control the game. It's going to help some people. It's not going to help other people. People are saying, with the shift too, how's that going to help a guy like Jeff McNeil who hit against the shift? These guys are going to have to be able to adapt because some of these rules are here to stay for a while. So they're going to have to find a way to, overcome this. And there's not one person that I would want more leading this team than Buck Showalter to get these guys through these rules. And look at what he did last year on his, merit alone, on the way he runs a game alone had to help the Mets win at least 5 or 6 games, whereas a guy like Luis Rojas cost us about 10 games. So having Buck being the guy to teach these guys the rules and learning them, I wouldn't have it any other way.
I totally agree with that point. And to that point, like Carlos Ortiz says, those rules take away from strategy. Well, not if you're Buck Showalter, right? Like not if you're, we have the right guy at the helm that I think helps this. He also said earlier that he's celebrating his birthday this weekend. So happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Carlos.
Coming in saying happy birthday. We want to jump in
happy
on
birthday,
that.
Brother.
Happy birthday. Look, before we head into the break, and I want to give you the opportunity. People who are watching this, people who listen, they know where to find you. You've had a show for a long time. But in case they don't, in case this is their first time hearing you, where can they find you? How can they listen? All of that fun stuff. What do you have going on with your show?
Yeah, Subway to Shea. You could get it on, mostly people listen on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, but you can subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts right now. I just did an interview with Jay Horowitz. Very great talking with him. Everyone knows him as that media legend, PR legend for the Mets. Now he is the vice president of alumni relations and the team historian. Great having him on. I only got him on for about like 20 minutes, but I want to get him on to talk about his book. So at some point, I got to reach out to him and try to get him on again. But yeah, you can catch my podcast through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor.fm, and I write for risingapple.com. So you can catch my articles there as well, risingapple.com.
Perfect. Yeah. And a lot of that stuff overlaps. We've had Jay Horowitz on this show. The guy is as good as everybody says he is, just in terms of being just a genuinely good dude. So nice, so pleasant, so friendly, so helpful in a way that people just aren't nowadays. And he doesn't have to do that. Like he doesn't have to do that for Subway to Shea. He doesn't have to do that for Till Mets Do Us Part. This is a guy who's been in baseball PR for 50 years or whatever it is. Like he doesn't have to do that, but he does it anyway. And it speaks volumes to him. Guys, if you don't listen to Subway to Shea, you should. It's fantastic. Ibby and I have been on it separately. We've been on it together. Obviously, we love having Ant on, and we love having the interaction and the synergy across the Mets, whatever you want to say, content creator sphere. I don't know. But we love to do that. Let's head into the break a little bit early because I want to put some of this rules conversation to bed. I want to talk about the QBC. Geez, I saw it in the comments. I was like, QBC, that's cool. No, I want to talk about the WBC is what I want to talk about. And some of the other stuff as it relates to the Mets. And I know that, Ant's got to get out of here in a little bit. So I want to maximize the experience that we have here with him. So if you're watching, just a quick ad spot, 10 seconds for the audio version of the show. It is John Sapanaro, Matt Ibby Ibanez, and our guest this week, Ant Rivera from Subway to Shea, will be right back. Yo, what's going on, everybody? Just like that, we are back. John Sapanaro, Matt Ibby Ibanez, Till Mets Do Us Part, live on YouTube, live on Twitter. The best way to interact with the show live is on YouTube, where your comments come in real time. Whether you have questions, you've got comments, you've got concerns, you want to just complain over and over and over again about the Ghost Runner, you can do that all in the comment section, and we see it. We see it. The other viewers see it. It is the perfect way to interact with the show, but we understand that not everybody can do that. So if you don't have time, you could always watch the entire episode as soon as we end the broadcast over on our YouTube channel, which is appropriately called Till Mets Do Us Part. Don't forget to subscribe, turn notifications on so you never miss an episode. And like Stevie Mac says, thumbs up all the way. Every time. It helps the algorithm. I don't understand it, but I know that it works. And of course, if you can't do any of that, you can still listen to the podcast on your way to work, school, while you're working out, walking your dog, whatever it is, starting tomorrow morning, wherever it is you get your podcast, all courtesy of the Chop Sports Network. Our guest this week, Ant Rivera from Subway to Shea, who has his own amazing Mets podcast. And so, guys, let's dive into the fact that the QBC is right around the corner. There it is. Those are some of the people who are going to play in it. The guy in the middle, for those of you who don't know, is Mike Trout. He's been the best player in Major League Baseball for over a decade, but nobody's ever seen his face because he plays for the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, which is like playing on the surface of Mars. No one goes there. No one knows about it. The team sucks. The owner's terrible, and he's about to let Shohei Ohtani walk, hopefully, to our New York Mets. I just wanted to give a little overview in case you guys weren't sure who that player in the middle was.
Way to bury him.
Listen, you recognize all the other people in there, right? You're like, oh, it's Mookie Betts, Bryce Harper, MVP, Paul Goldschmidt, of course, Pete Alonso. And you're like, who the hell's that guy in the middle? Is that the guy who was at the sideline for the Eagles playoff game? It is. Mike Trout has now been to more Eagles playoff games than he's been to a Los Angeles Angels playoff game.
Fair point.
So, that's just how it is.
I do question, hold on. I do question, though, if people could pull out Paul Goldschmidt. I do wonder if people could pull out Paul Goldschmidt over Mike Trout. I know we joke on Trout a lot, but I do question if I pulled some random guy off the street and said, hey, which one of these is Mike Trout? I think you would pick out Mike Trout before Paul Goldschmidt, but it might be close.
I don't know. I'm honestly not sure. Carlos saying, John, tell us how you really feel. I mean, it's just, listen, it just is what it is.
The Angels are a joke. The Angels are an absolute joke.
And how do you feel about the WBC? We've never talked about this because we didn't have a show and we didn't really know each other back during the last WBC. It comes up every 4 years, blah, blah, blah. Everybody knows the thing. But how do you feel about it? Do you like it? Are you cautiously watching it because you don't want players on your team to get hurt? Like, how do you feel about the WBC?
I enjoy it, but I wish it was after the World Series. I don't like it being in the beginning of spring because that's when everybody's trying to ramp up and get themselves ready. And when you have to play in the WBC, your ramping is a whole lot quicker than the month it would take you to get ready for the regular season. Now, I don't know if they if the players get ready a month before then or what, but I feel like if you do it at the end of the season, as the season's winding down, I don't know. I feel like it's a better time to do it. I know, weather becomes an issue because, we're getting into November and December. I used to say that I didn't like having it because I'm worried about the injuries, but these players can get injured fielding a ground ball in spring training. So I have to get that thought out of my mind. Besides that, I do like it. I do like having the different teams. You got the superpower in the Dominican Republic. You got USA, the defending champions. You got Japan and my guys in Puerto Rico. So, and there's a lot of other teams. You got Piazza running Team Italy. I mean, I think Israel has a team. I think they added some teams that I haven't seen before, but it should be some great competition. It just sucks that when you do it at spring training, when you need your team to come together and start getting ready for the regular season, that this kind of interferes with it. That's probably my only issue with it.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Ibby, what's your thoughts on it? You and I have really also, despite the fact that we've been doing the show for a couple of years, we've never really talked about the WBC.
I mean, I'll reiterate some of the things that I actually talked with Ant about on Subway to Show when we were talking about like Marte and his potential involvement, which isn't going to happen anymore. But the whole idea of it's like, I don't have an issue with the WBC. I said my biggest issue really comes down to when you have pitchers that are involved with the WBC, because I feel like, pitchers are so fragile as it is, and they're huge investments for teams, and a lot of teams really rely on their pitching. So my worry is usually on arms, whereas players, yes, injuries can happen. Yes, they might tire out. I brought up Pete as an example, who's someone who in September will look really tired and wiped towards the end. So now you're playing more serious baseball at an earlier start time, and you're going to be on a team that's going to be pushing to play in October, deep into October, with World Series aspirations. So the idea of extending it and making it longer on players, that fatigue could set in, and then that's when, depth in general and how you treat your body really comes into play. But I don't have an issue with it. Like I said, I do have fun watching the games. I love the energy that's brought. I've said this before on the show, and we did mention it a little bit. Like when you it might have been the last one or the previous one before that, when it was the Dominican Republic versus Puerto Rico in Miami, and that place was like on fire. And you've never seen Miami Stadium like that.
That's the busiest Marlins Park has ever been.
Ever. And the place was electric. You could feel it through the television. And like that was what I'm sure what they always picture based off of where they placed the stadium there. Like that's where they thought they were going to get on a nightly basis. But newsflash, you got to put talent on the field in order to garner that type of attention. But in terms of that, like that's great to see, especially because I'd much rather watch something like that as opposed to, guys in the 70s, 80s, and 90s in terms of numbers on the field for spring training, just going through some walkthrough type of stuff, boring innings, if you will. But in terms of that, I'm okay with it. But look, we got a lot going on for our Mets, but guess what? A lot of other teams have a lot of players too. You work yourself through it. We don't have that many arms, which is a good thing. Our pitchers are pretty much safe in terms of the starting rotation, I believe. So, I'm not too worried about it in that sense.
I'm not either. And that seems to be the general consensus here in the comments. Chris Ferrara saying, I'm excited for the WBC this time around. I am too. I like it because I like real baseball. I like that we don't have to watch, like you said, guys in the 70s, 80s, 90s, guys wearing, double numbers. Like you got like a number 99 and you're like, is there another 99? And you're like, oh yeah, it's a different guy. We don't even care. We just give everybody shirts. Sometimes they share shirts. Who knows? Like I'm tired of watching that. Spring training is so long, it becomes like arduous to watch. But I'm with Ant. I think it would be better if it was at the end of the season. I think November's a spot for it. And to Ant's point, I know it gets colder out, but it doesn't get that cold here in Southern California. It doesn't get that cold down in Texas at that point of the year yet, or Arizona or Florida. You could also play in places that have domes, so I think, and I know that they play all over the world too, but a lot of those other places, like the places in Japan that they play in, have domes. And so I think that there's certain options where they could play it at the end of the season. I think it would be better. Obviously, the Mets, like you both alluded to, have a lot of players going. We got most notably Alonso, McNeil, Ottavino, Lindor, and Diaz. After that, you get into Escobar. Obviously, he's got a big role on this team, but a little bit lesser than the first few guys I mentioned. Narvaez probably going to be our starting catcher. And then you go a little bit down and you see really a lot of those names also minor leaguers. You get down to Jose Quintana, who is the only person in our starting rotation that's going to play in the WBC. Look, it's obvious that Scherzer and Verlander weren't going to do it, and they don't need to do that at this point in their career. They're trying to win World Series and cement their legacy, which is already first ballot Hall of Famer walk through the door for both of them. But playing in the WBC isn't going to help that. Winning another World Series, bringing a world championship to the Mets would help that case. Not that it needs help, but it will help that case. Brandon Nimmo opted out. Few people said that in the comments. He said, look, I just signed a new deal. I don't want to do anything that messes with it. I think that's great. And obviously Marte was going to play, but with that little injury he suffered, he's backing out as well. So one of the things I do want to mention as it relates to all of that, there was a great comment in here from James Dowling, and I'll throw it to you first. And could the WBC help the Mets with all the players in it? And the younger guys have more time in the spring. So we're looking at guys like Beatty. We're looking at guys like Alvarez, Vientos. Do you think this is a blessing in disguise for the Mets because they're going to be forced to use those guys?
Yeah, it's definitely an absolute a good showcase for the younger guys to see what Francisco Alvarez has, to see what Brett Beatty has if he can win over third base. Obviously, if one of them, or even like a Mark Vientos, if they have a spring like Pete Alonso did in 2019, they're going to be brought up with the team. I could see that possibly happening. I think Francisco Alvarez's route to there, if it's only going to be as catcher, I think that's going to take a little longer time. I think they're going to send him back to AAA because obviously you have Tomas Nido, but Omar Narvaez is no slouch of a player. If you look at his stats, was it 2020, the shortened season? Last season he got hurt. Besides that, he's never hit lower than 266. I would have paid to see James McCann just hit 220.
Yeah.
I mean, 266 from a catcher, I'll take that every day of the week. And Omar Narvaez is going to definitely help out with Francisco Alvarez. I mean, I think they're both from
Venezuela,
right?
Venezuela.
So that's going to be very helpful. That was the first thing in the press conference that he mentioned was helping Francisco Alvarez out. So he knows his role here and he knows his deal. So it may eventually lead to maybe Tomas Nido not being on this team in the future. They gave him a team-friendly deal, which they might be able to trade at some point in the season. But I think to start, Francisco Alvarez will be in AAA. I think Brett Beatty may have an easier path to win over. And that might be best to have him play third base, to have Eduardo Escobar at some point be the DH for the Mets. Because, Daniel Vogelback is not really versatile. So the Mets need versatility on their team. We saw what happened when they had him, when they had Daniel Vogelback, and then they had Terrence Gore, who two guys who were only able to do certain things. You limit your roster, and that's something that the Mets don't want to do. That's something that I think that Buck preaches, that he wants versatility, and so does Billy Epler.
I totally agree with that. A lot of people agreeing with you in the comments. Rail saying agree with you, Ant, on Alvarez. Right as you were saying it, Carlos Ramos, like literally like sharing a brain. He's here to mentor Alvarez. It's not a coincidence that he was brought here. And then even you mentioned Escobar. He said, I love that Stevie Mack. I love Escobar saying the most important thing to him right now is to be there for Beatty and Vientos as a mentor as well. And he understands his place, going forward with this team. Ibby, he makes a lot of great points specifically about Brett Beatty. It's something that you and I talked about on this show over and over and over again during all the Carlos Correa drama. We talked about the fact that it gives the Mets more versatility if Escobar can play some third, some second, and DH a lot. I like Vogelback. I don't think Vogelback is the solution. I like having a guy who is more athletic, that can do more, that is a switch hitter, getting the reps at DH. And I think the best thing in the world that could happen is that Beatty has and force your hand the way Alonso did type spring, and he's playing third base, or at least playing third base part of the time. Even if they split the job at third 50-50 between him and Escobar, one of them's DHing, one of them's playing the field, back and forth sort of deal. I think that would be the ideal dream scenario, and I think Beatty's capable of doing it.
Yeah, I think all Mets fans would all agree that the best way for this team to maximize its potential is if Brett Beatty does come out swinging and is successful in the spring, and he proves that he deserves a spot on this team playing third base. If he improved his defense, we saw the news when he was saying that he was working out with Troy Tulowitzki during the winter, just trying to improve his defense to make it known that he belongs. Because look, you got to be a two-way player, and making sure that he can obviously contribute from the defensive standpoint, which is what a lot of people have criticized him throughout his entire major league career, but also throughout the minors, always questioning his defense. So if that's there, and he's playing third base, and Eduardo Escobar is our DH, I am with both of you in saying that I agree. Eduardo at DH makes this team a lot better as opposed to Vogelback. If Vogelback then becomes that lefty off the bench that can mash righties in big spots, and that's the way he gets filtered in. And then obviously he'll have spells at DH for a game as well throughout the long season. But I think that is the best opportunity for this team to maximize its potential. But it really comes down to Brett Beatty being able to perform. And I agree with Ant. I think he has a better opportunity to be the one that gets that shot, because I do believe Alvarez is going to be put at AAA. Outside of him going absolutely beyond Pete Alonso bonkers in the spring, I really believe that they want him to go to AAA, catch every single day, get established there, show that he can work a staff, and then come up and provide the bat, obviously, that he can bring, but also prove that he can catch. We said it's a very tricky situation because when you have two Hall of Famers on a win now team, there's going to be a little bit of pickiness, as there should be, because they're of a certain age. They want to make sure that when they go out there, they're giving it everything that they have, and they have to be on the same page. So until Francisco can get to that point, he's not going to be behind the dish. If he can get there, it makes us better. But between the two, I do think Beatty has a better shot.
I totally agree. And don't forget about the fact that Kodai Senga, there's a language barrier. There's a league adjustment barrier there. I'd rather have a guy, Ant, like Omar Narvaez back there, who's been there, who's done that, who's learned from pitching staffs and has all of that expertise, than a rookie out there just kind of doing his thing and also figuring it out. So I think a lot of that makes sense. And I know you have to go in a couple minutes, so I want to bounce two things off you really quick, and then Ibby and I will take it the rest of the way. This is a decent point that I think leads to Brett Beatty being able to potentially force his hand onto this team easier than some other folks. And Carlos Ramos says, guys, what about Beatty at left field? The Mets are thin in the outfield. The Mets are only an injury or two away from something like that potentially happening. So I think that just furthers the possibility of Beatty being on this team to start the year.
Yeah, we just talked about it. Versatility is the key, right? And you have, if Beatty can play left field. If he can play third base, you also have Jeff McNeil, who plays second base. He plays left field. He plays right field. So you are able to put these puzzle pieces together. I mean, I'm pretty sure that Billy and Buck are going through these situations and thinking of how they can best use all of these players to the best of their ability. And the only person that really kind of puts a stop in that is Daniel Vogelback, because he doesn't play a position. He's just coming into DH. Daniel Ruff, at the very least, I know that's a tough name to hear, but at the very least, he can back up Pete and play first base. But, besides that, you have Tommy Pham, you got Marte, who, I mean, injury prone. Outside of this season, Brandon Nimmo was an injury guy. Mark Canha does, to me, Mark Canha is more of a platoon player. That's the feeling I get out of him. So if you have a rotation of these players to keep all these guys fresh, I think even Buck mentioned it during his press conference the other day. Everyone wants to fast forward to September and October, but you can't forget about the rest of the months of the season. And he's trying to keep these guys fresh every day, and having all these versatile players that you can throw in the outfield, you can put in the infield. Even Luis Guillorme, he plays all fields. Eduardo Escobar, he can play second, short, third. I mean, you have all this versatility. So now players like, Pete Alonso can get a day off. Francisco Lindor, who played 161 games, he can get a day off, who desperately needed some time off when he was slumping. I mean, these guys need to also get some rest. So having this versatile team only helps.
I totally agree. And before
100%.
we're gonna table this part of the conversation and just give you a chance to react to this before you get out of here, because I know you're up against the clock. I don't know if anybody watching this or anybody listening to this has heard about this particular baseball player, but this comes as a total shock to me. But apparently Texas Rangers ace Jacob deGrom, I think I'm saying that right, was shut down for a few days with left side tightness. And it seems weird. This guy, they're banking on him to be a big part of their rotation. I don't know much about him, but he seems like he should be there on a team that won, I think 47 games last year. And now he went there because of their winning culture. And so, they're really looking for a big bounce back from Jacob deGrom.
And so it begins, right? I mean, right off day one, right off the bat. And, I'm not going to make fun of it or joke around about it, because, I do feel for Jake. I do feel for him and, his career. But this is a tough situation for Texas. Luckily for them, they went out and, signed a whole bunch of pitchers. So they got at least some depth going on. I don't know if it's great depth, but at least they got some depth. But when you pay Jacob deGrom that amount of money, dang, I hope he's able to make it out to opening day, because that's not what you want to hear on your first day into spring training.
It's absolutely not. And thank you for doing the show. I know you got to go. We appreciate you giving us until the moment. Ladies and gentlemen, Ant Rivera, Subway to Shea. Listen. Subscribe to his podcast. You can get it wherever
Download it.
You get podcasts, download it. His handles are right underneath him there at the bottom, at Ant Rivera 86. And then the other one says at Subway to Shea. So please go ahead, follow him. He's a great follow, especially once the season is rolling. We can all talk Mets on Twitter. Until Elon Musk fully ruins Twitter the way he's already begun to dismantle it. He's basically stripping it down to the studs, and I think he's going to sell it for insurance money. I would too if I wasted $44 billion on something that never made a profit ever. But anyway, Ant, thank you so much for being here.
Well, last week, speaking of Elon Musk, last week when you guys were doing the show and I was in the chat, I was trying to retweet your show live, and it wouldn't let me. And I was saying I was past my limit of tweets. I didn't tweet all day.
Yeah, you're past your limit. That's it. Yeah, they just don't like it. They don't. It's ridiculous.
Unbelievable.
No, man, but seriously, appreciate all the love. Appreciate you jumping into the chat when you're not here.
Appreciate you guys. Appreciate everyone in the chat.
Wore the Royal Rumble shirt for Anthony here today. So
awesome, you guys. You guys are the best. I appreciate it. Thanks,
I'll see you later.
I'll see you.
Bye.
Be good, man.
So, Ibby, we'll take it here for the rest, and obviously the comments, keep those stuff coming in. We got about 10 or 20 minutes to play with, whatever. No, your thoughts on the Jacob deGrom thing. Obviously, I said what I said, tongue firmly in cheek. Before we went live, I was talking to Ant about it, and I'm not gonna drag Jake through the mud. He's an all-time Met. He's a legend. It's just when I saw that headline today, part of me felt for him, but part of me had this weird, like, Mets
sense
PTSD.
Oh.
Well, yeah, like relief one, but then also like I was like, oh my God, I remember waking up to this. Like I remember waking up to this last year and the year before that, and like there's always something with DeGrom, man. Like it's
to
a shame
echo,
for
yeah.
him.
To echo what Ant was saying, like I didn't like when I saw the news, and then of course Mets fans, like to your point, like I knew you were joking with what you just said, but a majority of Mets fans just decided to hop into comments and just rip on the guy and like make fun of it and all this nonsense. It's like I feel for the guy because baseball is better when Jacob deGrom is healthy and he's doing what we always say Jacob deGrom things and just dominating, and like it's great for baseball. But I'm not going to lie to you. When I saw that news today, when it first popped up on my phone, I was at lunch duty at work for school, and I was talking to my one buddy, and he's a big baseball guy too. And I said, you're not going to believe this, but you probably are going to believe this. DeGrom's already hurt. And he goes, already? And I go, the fact that the Rangers posted DeGrom clocking in, and then less than an hour later, the next tweet that comes out is DeGrom's out for side tightness. It's like, holy shit. And my first original thought was, when I saw it, I go, holy shit. Could you imagine what the shitstorm would be if we came on here today, what we would be talking about for the entire hour if he was still a Met, just signed a big deal to come back, and he hurt his side on day one of pitchers and catchers? Could you imagine that media circus that would come? But now that he's out in Texas, it's just one tweet, and then you're not going to hear about it ever again, except for people that can't let it go here are just going to keep on going after it. But
right.
It is, look, I don't want to see the guy hurt. I want him to be healthy. I want him to finish out his career strong. But like I said just before to you, like it is a little bit of a sense of relief because we don't have to deal with it. Now, granted, we also have to understand we have an older staff, and these things can crop up throughout the season. They did last year for Max. They could potentially happen to Verlander. We don't know. But these are things that come when you get older. Jake, not that old just yet, but just seeing it happen, it sucks. I don't like seeing it. I don't like seeing great players get hurt, Hall of Fame caliber players get hurt. So it's unfortunate to see. I hope he's okay, but at the same time, I'm happy that we do not have to deal with it.
Yeah, I'm going to jump into the comments. A lot of people echoing either what me or Ant said. Stevie Mac, who the fuck is that guy?
Who the fuck is that guy?
James Dowling, and so it begins. Carlos, he's there for the money. Carlos Ortiz, that is. Carlos Ramos following it up by saying bullet dodged. And Chris, this is a fair point. Let's move on. We got enough Mets stuff to worry about. That's true.
Very true, Chris.
Saying, I had PTSD. I had the same kind of feeling of like, man, I remember what it was like when we were there not that long ago dealing with this. To your point, like what this show would have been like today if Jake was on the Mets. And then, look, Rael with a great point. Like, obviously, what I said, very tongue-in-cheek for the sake of the show, I agree with this. I don't like Mets Twitter laughing at Jake. Let's be better than that. And,
neither did I.
I don't like it either. Ibby, the joke that I made is not one about the injury, right? Which I think that sucks, right? That's terrible. That's great players need to do great things, and I hope that Jake has a great finish to his career. I hope Jake goes to the Hall of Fame. Honestly, I do. Sincerely. I really do, because what he did for the Mets was transcendent. What he brought to this team was otherworldly. And, I understand that people are upset. I understand people are mad that he left because he could have just stayed. I get that, but I don't think it's I don't think it's fair to just like, oh, well, this guy's trash, get him out of here. But at the same time, maybe I will say, how did he hurt him? Like, how is he stiff already? He hasn't done anything. Like, that's the thing that if he was like, that's what I want to bring it back to, and then we'll move on. If he was here and the Mets put, Jake back at it, and then an hour later it was like, but he's not going to throw today because he's a little tight. It's like, they're saying, oh, it's kind of cold. Like, listen, I live here in the West Coast. It can get cold in Arizona at night and in the mornings. Like, I know it's cold there, like not East Coast cold, but it's cold to do baseball stuff. Like, I get it. But like, dude, it's Arizona. There's a reason why it's spring training. Like Justin Verlander's in Florida. He's 39 years old. He's 40 years old. He was throwing day one. Scherzer was throwing day one. It's like, dude, like what is he cramped up from the plane? Like, I just don't get what is wrong with this guy physically. I don't understand.
It just seems as though, like we've seen over the last couple of years with him, it's like you would get all these little ticky-tack things that you would think weren't that big of a deal, but maybe it was an initial sign. Like, I don't know, like the fact that it's the elbow, it's the UCL, it's the leg, it's the ankle, it's a pinch, it's nothing serious. Now it's the side, it's the oblique. It's like all these little things. It's like maybe this is just a guy's body. I don't want to say giving up, but just a guy's body that just is affected by the smallest of things every now and again. And it takes a little bit longer to heal from certain things, especially when you get older. So, it's like I said, it's unfortunate. It sucks to see. I hate it. But yeah, no reason to make fun of the guy. Hopefully he gets better. But once again, it's not our issue. We don't have to worry about it in the sense. If you like Jake as a ball player, you hope for the best and hopefully he gets better. But in terms of the New York Mets, to Chris's point that he said before in the comments, we have a lot going on. There's more to talk about, and that's what the focus should be. Not so much Met fans just piling on into, Rangers fans or the Rangers team accounts Twitter. Like, it's just let it go. Let it go.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think, again, you just want to, you feel for the guy, but it's very curious. And that does bring me, Rael actually is sharing a brain here. She said, let's talk about how great it is to see Max and JV walking in together. Ibby.
Oh, yeah.
I had this feeling, and look, I understand we're getting Max Scherzer at the end of his career. I know that we're getting Justin Verlander at the end of his career. But, we got Max Scherzer off of one of the best years he's ever had. We got Justin Verlander off of one of the best years he's ever had, right? They're not going to be able to pitch forever. Father Time is undefeated. I understand that. But there was something last year about seeing Max Scherzer in a Mets cap, like the lovely Mets cap that you're wearing, right? There was something about seeing him in a Mets uniform that was like, I never thought I'd see the day. Never thought I'd see this. I never thought I'd see the Mets spend more money than anybody to go get this guy and bring him in and chase down a championship. And I have that same feeling all over again when I watch Justin Verlander today at spring training do the same thing. And watching him and Max walk in together. Look, I know you're not guaranteed anything. I know that, having the best players on paper doesn't win you a championship. But, dude, like watching Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer are New York Mets.
Yeah. And I said this to you a couple of weeks ago. I said how, the whole thing was, and the whole Twitter joke was, day whatever. And I still can't believe that Max Scherzer is a New York Met. And I said that it's going to be the same thing. Mets fans are going to continuously say, I can't believe that Justin Verlander is a New York Met. And just seeing the way he carries himself, he's a true professional, how he handles the media. You would think, for a guy that, granted, he was on World Series teams and on World Series champions and World Series teams that fell short as well. But for a guy that played in Houston and Detroit, comes to a New York market that's, look, bigger media, even with Houston being the powerhouse that it is. I'm sure the media is not like it is in New York. And he comes in.
Fair, it's a very big, Houston's a very big city. But
it is.
Nothing is New York.
Right. And the fact that baseball in New York is different than a lot of places. It's 24/7. It's 365. It's callers can call into the fan. They'll talk baseball in the middle of November, like whatever. It's just the fact that he comes in, handles himself, and I said this a lot to you. I said this to Jay Horowitz when we had him on, like the whole championship pedigree and what they bring to a team, and just seeing Verlander. I know he's a pro's pro. I know he's going to come in and bust his ass. And the fact that I see this guy, 39, pushing 40, looks like he's in phenomenal shape, just ready to work, and then comes in and has all the answers or all the questions being tossed at him, and he has answers for everything, just handling himself properly. I'm happy that this team is positioning itself to try and win a championship with players like that at the helm. It helps make everyone better. It breeds a championship mentality, which is what this team has never had in my lifetime. Granted, they had those fleeting moments of making it to a championship but falling short, but there was never that consistency. There was never that sustainability that we've always craved and wanted. Having players like this, even though it is going to be for a short amount of time, like you said, because they are older and longer in the tooth, when you establish something within a locker room with guys that are going to be there for a long time, the Lindors, the Nimos, the Diazes, we're assuming the Petes, like players like that, it continues to carry throughout their years as well, even when those players are long gone. So I love seeing stuff like that.
Yeah, and Carlos Ramos saying, I know the feeling, John. It's just awesome, brother. James Dowling saying, it's great to enjoy the little things now before fans go crazy again. Fair. Carlos Ramos saying, yeah, I call Sal Licata at 3 a.m. in the middle of the winter. I do too, but I just do it to crank call him. I just breathe real hard until he hangs up. This is a hot button issue. This is a hot button issue, but I do want to talk about it because I think it makes sense. How did they not release Khalil Lee? To which Rael saying, Chris, don't get me started on that. Ibby, look.
Yeah.
I am a big proponent. I brought this up without giving you any fair warning that I was going to, so I'll take the bullet spot on this. Okay. I'm a big proponent of innocent until proven guilty and all of that stuff, obviously, right? Like in the general sense of the word. But I also think that some stuff is not that hard to do. Like, I don't think it's that hard to not commit domestic violence, right? So I just, like, people tell me all the time, like, I'm a single guy in my mid-30s, and, like, I have older dudes sometimes that are like, I don't understand how you do it, man. I don't know how you date anymore. I don't know how you date. I'm like, are you asking me how I don't accidentally commit sexual assault? Because it's, like, real easy to not do by accident. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like you just be decent and just be a decent dude, and that's it. So I kind of use that as this example where it's like, look, maybe there's a lot of truth. Maybe everything is completely true about what happened with Khalil Lee, right? Maybe there's some that's true, some that's not true, right? Maybe there's some issues there. But when I look at this situation on the whole, I think the Mets probably need to not bring Khalil Lee to spring training. Like, you know, and in the comments here, it's like Carlos saying, I thought they DFA'd him. Chris saying they did, but he cleared waivers. So now they're free to bring him back in. And look, I'm not saying that the level of stardom or contract that you have means that you get special treatment. I'm just saying it's also Khalil Lee. It's not, you know, to use, I don't want to attach anybody's name to this who wasn't accused of something. So, you know, it's not prime Jose Reyes that we're talking about here, where you go, look, this guy's making a lot of money. We don't know if we can cut bait with him without paying him unless he gets like actually arrested or charges are levied or something like that. So I just look at it in a situation where, one, I think if you do something like this, I don't think that you have a place playing baseball. That's just my opinion. I think that you should be out. But I think it's especially easy if you're a guy like Khalil Lee, is my point, is what I'm saying. I don't think guys who are superstar ball players deserve special treatment in this case. I think that's actually a big part of the problem, is that a lot of elite athletes have never been told no their entire life, so they think they're gods and they think they can get away with anything, and I think that's a huge problem. I'm just saying it's easy for the Mets to release a guy who's never done anything at the major league level and just walk away. Like, nobody would, like, dude, would you be upset if the Mets released Khalil Lee? He went somewhere else. He was completely, like, the charges were dropped. They were like, we made a big mistake. We were all wrong. Nothing happened. And then he became a star. Like, I wouldn't even care. Like, I think the Mets need to do the right thing here and just cut bait with him.
It's unfortunate that we live in a world where, especially a sports world, where it doesn't matter what a player does. We've seen more despicable players with despicable acts get opportunities in the NFL and the NBA, and we've seen things in MLB as well. With this one, look, I think it's very easy to just cut bait and not have the player on the team, not bring him to spring training, because to your point before, even if you do cut bait to go along with the whole thought process of innocent until proven guilty, and even if you cut bait, right, and everything comes back the way it is, and it's everything's fine, nothing happened, misspoke, girl lied, whatever it was. Point is, you cut bait a lot of times people always say, well, you cost this guy his job and this and that. He was, he was within your organization. You didn't back him, all stuff like that. But for a player like Khalil Lee, who, to your point, hasn't proven anything in Major League Baseball, but he continues to hold on to his prospect pedigree more so than a player that I've seen in a while continuously hold on to that prospect pedigree where someone says, oh, yeah, but this guy was, at one point, he was like within the top 50. At one point, he was this. At one point, he was that. He's got these tools. He just can't unlock them. We could do it. He would find a job like that if you let him go. Mm-hmm. You can just eliminate yourself from the bad PR, from having to deal with stuff like that. So when I hear the Mets come out and say, well, nothing was said by MLB, so per rules, we're just going to bring him in because there's nothing wrong. Like, we're just going to go about it as business. When I see something like that, that reminds me of things that I see that piss me off when it comes to, like, the Greg Hardys of the NFL, like situations like that where these guys do not deserve to be on a field. I haven't really deep dove into the entire Khalil Lee thing, everything that he did from a domestic standpoint. Number one, you should never raise your hand to a woman, but I didn't like deep dive in. So I don't know the entire story, but the only thing I can say is when things like that are brought up, a lot of times when there's smoke, there's fire. Yes, there are situations where things are said and it's meant to hurt someone because of whatever, growing beef or past issue, whatever. But I just think it makes it a lot easier if you just did cut bait. But this is pro sports, and they probably looked at it and said, as wrong as this sounds, they probably looked at it and said, nothing was done. Nothing was said by MLB. We're low on outfielders. Let's bring them in. And that's probably what it was.
Yeah, and to me, it's look, I don't want to make it sound like this is the worst thing that the Mets could do, right? Like, the Mets have done a lot of right under Steve Cohen, especially after year one of Steve Cohen, when it was very much a transition year from the Wilpons to the new ownership to Steve Cohen putting his people in place and all this stuff.
Clearing out all the garbage, the sexual
clearing
stuff.
Clearing out the Jared Porters, the Zach Scotts of the world. Like, I know Steve Cohen was here for some of that, but again, it wasn't necessarily his doing. It wasn't him hiring these people. It wasn't, they were, again, it was very much a transition. I do think this is one of the worst things that the Mets have done under the Steve Cohen regime, because like I said, it's just easy. It's just easy to walk away from Khalil Lee. There are some times, and this is what I'm trying to say. Again, I'm with you on this. I have a zero tolerance policy for domestic abuse. I have a zero tolerance policy for all of that stuff that goes on in sports. I think it's all garbage. And I think if you get banned for life for it, I have no beef with that. But I just look at it. There are situations, because of the way contracts are written in sports, where sometimes it's not easy to walk away. Sometimes you have to go, man, baseball contracts are guaranteed. We just signed this guy to $300 million. We're not going to cut him and have to pay him anyway. We have to at least let this go a little while and see what's going to happen. Maybe we'll send him home for a bit, but like, there's a legal standpoint a little bit that has to take place. You're not dealing with any of those hoops with Khalil Lee. What is he making? League minimum? He's on a minor league deal. Just cut him. Just cut him and let him walk away. I don't care. That's what I'm trying to say. When it's to me, this stuff should be easy all the time. I recognize that as somebody who doesn't have billions of dollars, who doesn't own a team, who doesn't run a team, of course, it's easy for me to say it's easy to just cut these guys easy peasy every single time. I just think in this particular instance, it's just the easiest thing to do. Just say goodbye, because he probably did it. He probably did. I don't know.
I'm always of the thought process that if you could eliminate a headache, eliminate the headache. But to your point, we don't know the inner makings of how all these things work, what goes on. But yeah, just to sum it up, it's an ugly situation. And when things get ugly, I think it's very easy to just cut bait, especially when you're talking about a player that is not of the caliber that's going to affect you from a financial standpoint. So you have to start asking more questions. When it's something cut and dry, especially when you're dealing with someone who has the wallet that they have, I would just say, thanks, Khalil, but no thanks, adios, and move on. And if he's cleared of everything, believe me, based off of the constant talking of his prospect pedigree, he would have landed somewhere else. He would have gotten a job back. It wouldn't have been like he would have been out of baseball and blackballed if he was proved to be cleared. But this is where we are. And, I'm not a fan of it, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and again, it's as easy as saying like, "Oh, we want outfield depth. Like, go sign Ender and Ciarte. Go sign, you know what I mean? Like, go get another Tommy Pham and put him in AAA. Go get you could always fix the situation. I don't want to hear it. And Rael saying the girl has photos with bruises, etc. And that's our point, Rael. Like, we're just trying to this stuff is not okay. And look, I know this is a baseball show first and foremost. But you guys brought it up. I wasn't sure if we were going to talk about it, but I felt like because it was in the comments, it'd be that we should bring it up and we should talk about it because it does relate to the Mets. And you and I both have hard stances on stuff like this too. And I think sometimes on sports shows like this is when you don't talk about that stuff, it almost excuses it, right? Like, in other words, like there's not enough light being shed on it because he's not a big star. There's not enough light being shed on it because people with, a decent but very active following like the two of us have are going, "Oh, I don't want to touch that. I don't want to talk about that because it's not about baseball." It's like, I think more people should talk about it. I think it's important to talk about that stuff and really kind of shine a light on it. I think the world is better for it. So anyway, we'll get out of here in a minute, Ibby, but let's talk about something a bit more positive. Spring is here. Spring training has started. What are your final thoughts about our New York Mets as we head into spring training officially?
I am so excited. Today in Jersey, it was a clean, crisp, sunny day, about 65 with a light breeze. I was like, I felt baseball. So when I'm watching all the guys in the videos walking in, it's just like it's like that nice Florida weather carried its way up the coast, and it gave me a little bit of a taste of what is to come. The 2023 season is here. I'm beyond excited. Just seeing the guys, like I said before, talking with conviction, talking with confidence, bringing a whole bunch to the table in terms of what they think this season's going to be. I loved hearing the stuff that Max said, that Verlander said, that Pete said, that Buck was saying. Like, everything is just lining up to where this is going to be another fun Mets season. Look, it's always going to be a roller coaster. There's always going to be something. It happens every year, whether the team is good or bad. We're expecting good things this year. We're expecting big things, as am I, as are you. I'm pumped up. I'm ready to start watching some baseball and diving into everything. And as always, bringing plenty of stats like I always do to this show. So hopefully you're ready for that. Everyone else is ready for that. And I'm excited for another big year for us here at the show as well.
Me too. Carlos Ortiz saying 85 here in Florida, 63 in New York. I just looked at my watch. It's 61 here in Los Angeles. I don't like being the coldest one. That's weird, and I don't like it.
61 is cold. Must be nice. It was like 15 here 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, no, this is like as cold as it gets. No, I echo everything you said. I hope that as we stick with this time change, that people get more and more used to it. I really appreciate everybody who had their notifications on, who follow us on Twitter, who knew about the time change. Obviously, we had a lot of our diehards in here, and we appreciate you guys following us to the later time slot. It may not be permanent. It may not be forever. It might slightly move later. It might slightly move earlier. We're trying to find the best time to get the most interactions, right? And also, as the season starts, not be right up against the Mets games if we possibly can. Some people mentioned in the comments way earlier about the 6:40 start time and stuff, and how we're going to contend with that. And so it is a little tricky, but we are just trying to make sure that we, kind of do the best that we can and maximize the reach. And we're hoping over the next couple of weeks, as we continue to do the show in this time slot, that, the live viewer numbers go back up to where they were before. And of course, that's through so much of you guys spreading the word on Twitter and on social media. We're going to continue to do that. Give us the thumbs up, turn the notifications on, all that fun stuff, because it really does help. And the last thing I'll say is that I did it. I covered the fuse boxes with Mets art.
You did.
You guys look behind me.
I see it.
That is a watercolor from Joe Petrucci, and I've had it for a long time, and it fit perfectly over the fuse box, so it's awesome. It covered it. It's good to go. It is absolutely incredible, and I don't have to stare at that ugly-ass fuse box anymore. My apartment is finished. It took me 2 weeks, but it is done. All the artwork is up. All my furniture is here. Life is good. So, Ibby, it's always a blast talking to you. Sorry about the internet issues. And then
I'll work through it.
Good. I almost forgot because we did like 25 minutes without him. But shout out to Aunt Rivera from Subway to Show.
Big time shout out to Aunt.
Great content creator in his own right. Great Mets fan. We love having him on. I think over the next couple of weeks throughout spring training, maybe not every week, but Ibby and I are going to work on getting some guests in to talk about some stuff. I think it's going to be fun. I think the interactions are going to be great. Guys, keep it up. Just keep on being here. We love talking to you guys every week. Yes. Every
single week. Oh, before I forget this, the mail did come in the other day. Shout out to Rael. Thank you so much. She did send me a signed baseball of Carlos Beltran. So thank you so much for that. I did appreciate that. It is much appreciated. My wife was very curious as to why there was this random box with it written in marker saying things. I was like, don't worry. It was a friend of the show, sent me something. Don't worry. It's nothing crazy. But she was like, is this like crazy fan mail? I was like, no, it's not crazy fan mail. It's just very nice fan mail. So thank you so much for that. I'm going to get a little case for it, and I'll make sure to display it. So thank you so much for that.
Oh, and I gotta make. I was gonna end, but we gotta do this. Chris Ferraro saying, "Oh damn, shout out Rail," and then Rail saying, "You're welcome, maybe you deserved it." So
thank you so much.
Thank you on behalf of the show. Absolutely, guys. That is the episode. Till Mets do us part. John Sapanaro, Matt Ibby Ibanez. We will see you all next week when we go live. It will be 5:30 Eastern time, and of course, you can always catch it after, and you catch it the following day wherever you get your podcast, courtesy of the Chop Sports Network. We will see you guys next time. Peace.